I mean, from where I was when I started, I get in it, and it's like, oh, okay, I got rid of that one level of fear or doubt or lack or whatever. Now I'm like, yay. And then I get like, oh, I hit another ceiling. Okay, how do we work through that? And it's just, and when we can really connect to this idea of like, it really is about the journey. It's about the learning and the lessons and the connections we make along the way and the stories we're getting to share and tell. And just as I said, impacting people even on the smallest scale, just talking to someone at the grocery store, making their day a little brighter, seeing them. I hear so many people like, I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard, I'm invisible. The smallest smile you can share with someone, and they'll typically smile back, law of reciprocity. I mean, it's just such a beautiful small thing, and yet it can really make a big impact on your day for them and for yourself.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become the best possible versions of themselves and to strive for overall health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, all of the healths, without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who've been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time somebody shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. This is the juice of my podcast, is just conversations.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah. And just for the listener, we were talking about cats and how amazing they are. And this guy right here is hanging out with us today. His name is Squeak.
Oh,
very long story short, him and his brothers were born in my shed, and I saved him, and he was the runt, and his meow was the squeakiest, so he's Squeak.
I love that. I love that. I have a brother and a sister. They were the same. They were fosters. They'd lost their mom, and we would feed them with, like they were so small, we had to feed them with a little droplet because out of the place of the mom. And I kept the runt. Like, I won't go into the full story because I bought my first house actually because of my cats. And she had the same. She just recently passed at 16, but her name was officially Twiggy because she was so tiny. But when she meowed, she would go beep, 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 beep. So we called her Put Put. That was pretty. She responded more to Put Put than she did to her actual name. So I love that you call it Squeak. There's sometimes the sounds that they make ends up being their name. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I have a question for you. I know we just met, but are you also a crazy cat lady?
I am a crazy animal person in general, not just cats. Like I have two cats. I've always had cats. I have a dog. I had two. I have one. But I'm like the crazy animal person of the neighborhood. I keep little dog cookies in my pocket. So when I'm walking, if I see anybody, and typically when I meet someone, I say hello to the animal and I get down on the ground and I'm like, hello, you. And then I look up at the owner. I'm like, oh yeah, how are you too? So definitely I am not just cats. I'm just a crazy animal person.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I would say
I don't even apologize for it. I'm like, people all talk. I'm like, I'm just going to give, and it's somewhat selfish because I get so much pleasure out of it too, right? Like it's fun for them, but I just like, my heart lights up, my energy goes up. Like I'm just like in like happy mode when I do it. So
yeah,
no qualms about it or apologize for it because I'm like, this is just fantastic, right? Like what a simple way to be, to enjoy, and there's no conditions, right? Children and animals I really enjoy because this like pretense, right, where we think we have to be a certain way. You don't need that with animals or kids. You just get to be wild and free and just like make funny sounds and be on the ground and goof around and play. And, it's how do we take that same energy into our regular life? Yeah. But there's so few conditions and people will allow themselves more of that space to do it with that. So I just.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like animals and children are like the embodiment of unconditional love.
Absolutely. It's interesting you
Yeah,
say that because I was just talking to someone the other day. I was like, if we could learn to love each other the way we love our for those who love their animals, there are people who just shouldn't have animals, but
exactly.
for those who do, because we forgive quickly, we don't, you don't remember, like, I remember when you stepped in the water bowl, dog.
Yeah.
You see them and you may get frustrated at them. And yet there's such a beauty. Like, I know when, as I said, my recent cat, she passed, and I was heartbroken, but at the same time, I know that I never missed a moment. Like, I could be in a crazy rush, and if one of the animals was like made a funny sound or said something, I knew to stop, because I was like, I don't want to regret missing a moment like this. Like, I don't want to rush past it. And I
Yeah.
think it's such a beautiful thing because we're so willing to give of ourselves, and we receive from them so much simplicity, and we don't judge it, right? Like, it's not like, well, what are they really thinking, and why
Yeah.
did they, like, my dog is the weirdest dog in the world. He's a rescue also, and I'm so grateful that he I have him, and he wasn't my first dog, because if he's on the sofa all happy and I sit beside him, he gets up and leaves. Now, if that was your partner, you'd probably be upset about it, but because it's just such an unconditional love. It's like, okay, dude, and off you go. And there's
Yeah.
no, so as I said, if we could just embody that sense of be and let be with each other, with our
Mm-hmm.
lives, with the experiences, how much, how much more joy could we receive in life? How much more simplistic it could be, right? Like, it's learning to just
Yeah.
be in those moments and let go of the expectation, let go of this force outcome idea. And we do that with kids and animals, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
expect the unexpected when you're with them, because that's part and parcel. So absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful example of what I believe love is, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
be in that moment, to accept exactly as the other person is, and
Yeah.
to do that dance of just like give and take, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is beautiful, simple.
Yeah. And you were also talking about how, around animals and children, you can just be yourself. I think there's one other place in the world where we can do that, and that's Las Vegas.
That is very true.
I only say that because I was just there a couple weeks ago and I was like, why don't I care that I'm dancing in public in this casino? Because I don't. But yeah, that's off topic of animal.
Yeah, but actually, it is and it isn't, because it's finding those. I grew up in Montreal, Quebec, Canada,
Mhm.
and there was a bar called Les Foufounes Electriques. And it was the most interesting. Montreal already is very European, but it was a really interesting bar because you had people at the end of the day in business suits there. We had a very large population of like the punks and like everything. And everybody went to this bar, and nobody really paid you any attention. Like, you could
Mm.
be the businessman, or you could be, and it was one of my favorite places to go, because you exactly, you didn't, it's kind of like in Vegas, you're almost pretty much invisible there. Like, everybody
Yeah.
just expects, like, my girlfriend was actually there, and she showed these bright pink pants she was wearing. She goes, the good thing is, I know I'm not going to be the most outrageous person I see today, because everything is done. So when we can
Hmm.
find those spaces, and doesn't it feel good when you get to let go like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And also, I think what added to it is like, as you can see, I love like rock star makeup. I've always loved dark makeup, and I forgot all my makeup. When we got there, I'm like, okay. And like, side note, no, my listeners know this, but my eyebrows are fake because they fell out when I was 34. And I had to borrow eyebrows from my friend, and I didn't care that they looked totally different. I mean, it was really cool.
Yeah,
So it kind of
absolutely.
like one would think it would ruin part of my experience, but I think it enhanced it. Just being like IDGAF. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. And you know what? It's fun too, because like you said, that was a choice at that moment, right? You could decide, oh my God, this is terrible. Or you can decide, hey, let's just see, let's just go out, let's try it. Because I mean, worst case, you could buy more makeup, right? But that
Right.
push that was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. And
Hmm.
it's that pivotal moment that are we going to decide to follow what's expected, habitual, what we think, those rules that we live by, right? That
Yeah.
most of us don't even know we're living by. or to be like, hey, how can I challenge myself a little bit and go and have a bit of fun with this? And just, as I said, for me, it's all about curiosity. How can you get curious and play and try different things? And for me, it was because I was from such a space of certainty, like through corporate, I'd gone where I was like, if I didn't know the outcome, is like, no way, I'm not veering off the path. And let me tell you, when I decided to let that one go, I went totally the opposite end, because I'm like, let's just see, let's play with life, let's just enjoy.
Yeah.
And so I love that. It's just, I did that. I was in Tampa for a few days just the other day. And I was like, I put on about 20 pounds in the last year. It's been a pretty rough year. I've gone through a lot of things, separation, moves. And although I was like, I thought when you got stressed, you're supposed to lose weight. Is this something as you get older and it goes the opposite way? But I was like, you know what? Normally I would have been like, oh, well, but I was like, I'm just going to go. I had like my skirts and my stuff. I'm like, I'm just going to totally live from inward out, not from outwards in. I'm just going to go be myself and enjoy. And if someone has anything, I'm not even going to worry, because I said, most of us think people are looking at us and are thinking, and they're really not. They're really not. We put so much stress on ourselves. And I had the best time. I didn't put makeup on. I was like wearing I don't even know. When you pack and then you get there and you go, what was I thinking? Like my shirt didn't match my short. I was like, whatever. I'm just going to go with the flow. So I love that. Yeah. I love that. So powerful.
I definitely, I got that vibe from you when I told you my son was sick and I had to cancel last minute, and you were just like, hey, it's totally okay. I was like, ooh, I really like her.
Well, and that's what I said to you too, is I respect that, right? Like like when you start sacrificing what is most important to you in order to show up under a pretense or think you have to, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it, right? And yet so many of us do that. So many of us end up at a certain point, and all the things that we love and think are important, heck, we lose track. We don't even remember half the time. I'll be honest. Like I went so long of doing what was expected and what was right and what we're told is a successful life. And I mean, I was like, wait a second, who am I? Like, I don't even know anymore. Like you're putting on all these facades. And so when you told me that, I was like, yes, absolutely. Be with your child. Like that's what life is about. Like your child needs you. You want to just hug them and love them. And that's life. So absolutely. No qualms there.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, the reason I do what I do is to help people. I'm a coach, but also the reason I work from home is and made that choice to do so is so that I could be with my son if he's sick and put my family first. Because when I was working, even though nobody ever made me feel bad if I had to like call off because I was sick or, do something that had to do with my son, I still felt the guilt. Like, what are they thinking of me because I'm doing this thing? And that's not there anymore because I'm my own boss. So, yeah, it's a big thing. So
it is.
When people understand like you, it's huge, because not a lot of people, and people will be like, okay, we'll get a babysitter. No, he needs his mommy.
Well, and you know what? And that's why sometimes, like, I kind of laugh and think of myself like, when I lived in the city, you'd go by the street corner. I lived in Toronto for a long time, and you'd have the people on their little boxes preaching their message and whatever. And I used to kind of be like, but now where I am now, it's like, I understand. It's like, I want to scream from the top of the mountaintop, right? Like we live so much of our lives exactly in that kind of, I almost picture, I'm getting an image of like a clear box, right? Like, we see what's around us, but we're locked in it. And like, I came from corporate. I started working at age of 13. When I walked away from my corporate career after 25 plus years, I called it a paperful life. I had all the titles and benefits and cars and vacation. And yet I was totally dead inside because I was living based on what I thought everybody else expected. And not even just what they expected. We're taught every day what is supposedly right for us, right? It's in marketing, it's in advertising. It's really just a way to sell us stuff. And from our parents, I always say we move into rules from a very young age, right? Kids should be heard, seen, not heard. Don't say anything unless you have something nice. We have all these beliefs that we don't even necessarily see them as rules that we've somehow absorbed and question them. Like, do we actually agree with them? Do they align with who and what we want to be? And yet we put so much of our life and so much of ourselves on hold in order to meet these rules that aren't even ours. Yeah. They're not even ours half the time. We don't even agree with them.
Yeah.
So it's how do we start to actually, even that's why I say the word curiosity to me is I do like mindset curves. C is for curiosity. It's like, how do we get curious in life? How do we start questioning? And even rather than just assuming, well, that's how it's always been, says who, right? Like, let's get curious in what we're doing. Why are we doing the things we're doing? And do they bring us joy and light us up? Because if they don't, then we really want to get curious. So why do we keep doing them? Why? Because like, you chase that career. Like for myself, I would chase. Because I started working young. I hadn't gone to, I finished college, but I started working. My mom moved out of I didn't want to move with her. She moved out of the province. And so I went to work and I started getting, a promotion. And you start chasing these things that you think are going to fill you up. And they don't fill you up. And you're like, so you don't start questioning though right away. You're like, oh, well then I must need more. And you start pushing all the dreams, it was interesting. I had a chat with a girlfriend this morning. We were talking about, she was like, well, what were the original dreams? It's like, I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to be like a daycare teacher. It was always things with kids and stuff. And I'm like, where did I drop that? Where did I let that go and let it fall to the wayside in that chasing of what's expected of us?
Yeah.
And for me, it's really important and that's why I like curiosities, because as much as we all need stuff, I mean, so there's always going to be stuff for sale, but especially now with AI, there's such a swing towards people trying to show us what we're supposed to want or need in order to fill us up. And we're losing more and more of our own voice, of our own creative play and juices. And if we're not open to being like, what brings me to life? Like we're talking about animals, right? Like something so simple as that, right? How often do we let ourselves just sit for 5 minutes in stillness and be with an animal, or just hold the hand of somebody we love and not be mentally rushing to that next moment, right?
Yeah. I remember on the topic of just letting yourself be still, last year I took a 5-day certification course for life coach, and I took the whole week off of work. And I was like, I'm being a rebel. But the whole thing is on Zoom. And so I sat here for hours every day. And the first day was so uncomfortable because I was like, I need to be doing something. What am I supposed to be doing? And what I was supposed to be doing was just being and sitting and being still and being part of we call it the room. I think there was about 42 of us. And so, yeah. So allowing myself for a whole week to just sit and be was like game changer for me.
It is. And I mean, I even take that to the next level, because that you're still absorbing information in our brain, especially if you're in coaching. A lot of times we're listening and then we're saying, we right away, because we care so much, we're saying, how can I implement it outwards, right? Like, how can I bring this? And so much for myself, what I've also learned as a coach is, I know most of the time the message is me. Like most of my social media posts, people are like, how do you come up with this stuff? I'm like, it's something I had to hear for myself. I had to remind myself, or I've just worked through. And so the stillness part too, because like even in nature, like I can tell when I always know when I need to really detach and go to stillness without even a Zoom or anything. Like for me, it's nature. I'm a nature freak. Give me a little bit of water or a crackling fire or the trees blowing in the wind. But my writing will stall. I do a lot of writing, and I can tell right away. That's one of my little triggers is when I sit down and it's suddenly like I'm thinking it. I'm not allowing it. And I've been able to come to a point where I can tell that difference. And that's when I'm like, okay, I need to just take a step back. I need to take a breather, and it doesn't have to be huge. Like I was doing a meditation today, like a 5-minute walking, right? Like it's really just saying, okay, how do I just sit for a moment and sit? You could be walking and actually take breath, because actually, I shouldn't say many, because one of the first times someone said take a deep breath, I was like a rooster.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're breathing wrong, like it should be from your diaphragm. I was like, what? Like, I didn't even realize I'm sure they may have taught us at some point, but it's not something you realize. So just taking those few deep breaths immediately slows your nervous system down, brings everything a little bit more clear. And then just to allow, like even sometimes, like I do I'm part of this group, Chair of Joy, and we sit, and it's like, bring to your memory, like a moment with your pet, or bring a time you were proud, or bring that celebration, focus on something that ignites your soul and your spirit, and then just allow yourself to feel it through your entire body, from your head to your toe. I call it every cell, I call them happy cells. So I try and picture them the happy cells. And that can take 60 seconds. Everyone can allow themselves. Are we allowing that time for ourselves? Right? Go, 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 go. You have to be doing. You have to have outcomes out. And as I said, just that small bit. And so I always know when I go to sit and I'm like, what should I say? I'm like, well, there's the word, Sarah, that just told you that you're on the wrong path. It's not what should you be doing, right? It's like what's just coming through you. And that being able to sit still and just be, it's tough. It sounds like that's the interesting thing with personal development. It's like, it's so darn simple. Half the time people just don't listen because they're like, that's not possible. But simple, unfortunately, doesn't mean easy.
Right.
And so it's almost counterintuitive, because there's so much that's why on my thing, I always say to remember and reclaim, because I honestly think we're born with everything we need, every answer we have. We've just forgotten. It's gotten dusty.
Yeah.
It's gotten kind of foggy. So how do we wipe that dust away? How do we reconnect? And as hard as it is, most people have a lot of trouble moving into meditation in the beginning. And that's why I say you really can start with like a 60-second, right? Like small little incremental 7, and just allow that quietness to come back into your mind, right? To slow that busy down and just be like, oh, okay, wait a second. I remember one of my first, I started in this whole area. As I said, I was in management and director for many years. So I've been coaching people that way for many years. But when I did my first, it was a Tony Robbins free event, right when COVID was starting. And they're like, remember a time when, and I have to be honest, I was a blank. I couldn't pull any memories. Like I had just been so busy focused on getting somewhere that it all went behind. So as I go through this more and more, like I'll be sitting sometimes in stillness and a memory will just pop up from, some are good, some are bad. I mean, they both, unfortunately, when you bury the bad, quite often, unfortunately, we sacrifice the good ones too. So at some point when we start to open the doors, they both come back, but then we can look at them a little differently too, right? Like, so a lot of the worst memories or moments that came back, as you move through this, you start to be able to see that as much as we hated it, there actually was a lesson that maybe we needed, or a gift that, I mean, everyone says gift. And if you're not really moving through it, it's kind of a weird word. People like gift, but there are certain things that in life that I realized, had they not happened, I know that much of where and who I am today would have been very different. And so I live my life like I want to be happy with who I am. And so that means that understanding or having curiosity. That's why I like the word curiosity. It's a little less intense of anything, especially in the beginning when we're just trying to, clear that dust and just see what was I able to grow through from that, right?
Yeah.
And that has helped a lot of unfortunate moments to be reframed in a way where I can say, okay, I didn't love it, and if I could change it, I still would. But if I had to move through it, which we did, we can't go back and change it. That machine has not yet. I'm not sure AI will ever be at that capacity. But then what can I kind of take from it a little bit? So
yeah. And I love this idea of reframing it, because then we can relate to it, to the memory differently. Have a different reaction when we think about it. Like sometimes it's, oh, I can't believe that happened to me. And then we can change it into, I am who I am because this happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure if we spoke or not, but my mom took her own life. And
Mm,
that's the kind of thing you really are like, if you could go back and change it, I would. But I also know that if again, I can't change it. And that's just a reality,
yeah.
right? We can sit and think about it and wish it could be different and spend years and years. And I did that for about 6 years before I really kind of was able to move through it. I sat in that kind of like, whoa, why and how come,
Yeah.
and blaming myself and all that fun stuff. And when I was finally able to kind of move through it, and for me, a lot of I read the Power of Now, which was actually the book that kind of helped me move through, because it was a big section of that book was about ego. And I understood that I was really seeing it only from my perspective. As a child, it kind of makes sense, right? You're like, yeah. But when I could see it from her and then have compassion and be like, I just felt so heartbroken that she had not been able to live a life she loved. She had not done all the things she wanted to do. She had not. Then it took away that kind of like feeling originally that would allow me to say, okay, I don't love that it happened, but I can move through this now. And I laughed a couple of years later, because I'm like, well, if I can live through that, ain't nothing holding me back, right? Like that to me was like the worst. So that was the lesson I was kind of able to take and see, like I know for my own resiliency that if I've been able to move through this and come to terms with it, and be able to celebrate her life rather than mourn the loss of it, then I'm like, bring it on. I don't have to really be afraid of anything anymore in life. It still hurts. There's still the down moments. There's still the crashing to your knees. There's still the crying on the floor sometimes.
Yeah.
But those are moments, right? They're temporary. You're going to move through them. And that gave me a beautiful new ability to see life in general, of like, okay, it's a moment again, but there's always that tomorrow. And so it's very much part of my message is like, always believing and understanding there's always something to look forward to, right? Like we forget,
Yeah.
split second, your whole life can change. And that to
Yeah.
me is magic. A conversation with someone, a smile someone gives you, there's so many amazing things. So to never get stuck in the uncertainty of the certainty of thinking that this is what it is and things will never get better, because it's a challenging time right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it breaks my heart, like hopelessness, isolation. And again, with AI growing the way it is, if you're not at a stage where you're kind of comfortable with who you are and know who you are, it's going to get tougher. And that is what keeps me ignited, is like,
Yeah.
that's why I love that, again, curiosity, your uniqueness, right? So much we're talking about
Yeah.
authenticity. And yet it's one thing most people struggle with. I'm amazed. Beautiful women that I know, corporate women, like all areas, and they still, their sense of worthiness and who they are being enough. I'm like, we all share such a common story in many ways.
Yeah.
Right. But most of us are afraid to speak it and show our vulnerabilities, or show I call them our uglies, right? Like we think they're ugly, so we hide them. And yet when we do, we start to see just how much we have in common with each other.
Yeah.
Not exactly the same storyline, but the founding principles of it. So much more are we alike as people than are we different.
Yeah. On this conversation of AI, I think it's amazing what it can do. And also, I think it takes away the authenticity of the human. And like, how would it even match the vulnerability of a human? You know what I mean? Like, I use it to put captions on my reels, because that takes a lot of time to do by hand. So I'm like, here, you do it, AI, thank you. But for me, like, my whole thing on my social media is what you see is who I am in real person too. Like, I will post makeup free, eyebrow free videos. That this is who I am. This is how I am in real life. I'm funny. I'm a dork. I cry a lot. Um, and so like what you see is what you get. And then when you put AI into it, um, like for example, the give it a photo and we'll make a nice AI photo of you. I'm like, but that's not you. You know what I mean? So it kind of like it pulls out the you of you, the you-ness.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I mean, it's stunning what you can do with the AI
Yeah,
imagery. I
crazy.
know about AI and like prompting. I don't use it too because I am by rights a writer. Like I've been my first poem was published when I was in like grade 4 or 5. And if I
Nice.
even pretend to play with AI, it sucks all my creative juices. So
Yeah.
I will use it because people don't realize, but if you're ever looking for like a funky recipe or an idea, like that's how I'll use it. I was like, I want to lose a couple pounds. Give me a 7-day diet to create a meal plan where I like with food, I actually know what it is. Cause you know, you go on
Yeah.
these things like get this weird spice or this. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So it's fun for that. But my girlfriends took some classes and they're doing photography and it's really cool. I have to admit the images are cool, but they do their face replacement. And it seems to me every time they're being done, they look younger and younger in the pictures. And that's where I get concerned is like, at what point are you going to start looking at your own pictures when you're using that face replacement and start judging yourself based on the AI version of it? So I'm like you, I post like, I got wrinkles. Like I just turned 50. I own them. I'm proud. And I'll post without makeup because I'm like, this is who I am. And part of my own self-love journey is loving her as she's getting older.
Yeah.
And are there days where I look worse than others? Absolutely. um, but that's the real, that's the raw, that's who we are, that's the humanity of us. And so I have nothing against AI. I just worry like, and that's why I say be the one using it and don't allow it to then use you. Because if people are
Yeah.
posting, like there are people I know and that's all they're doing now is posting the AI versions. I'm like, I miss your beautiful face. Like, let me see you in there somewhere in between. So you don't forget and start to judge yourself and go, well, I usually show up and in reality, I'm now, I'm looking younger and younger and perfect and no wrinkles. And I should have like, I got a pimple. I was like, who gets a pimple at 50? I'm like, seriously, is there not a point that's going to stop? But I'm going to still show up with it because we all get pimples. That's just,
Yeah.
well, I don't know if we all get pimples, but we get pimples.
Yeah.
I did anyways. So yeah. And I think also in the essence of, like what's being written, what's being shared, because if you use AI to just write it and you post it, where's your unique voice in that? Where's your connection to what you're saying? Like even people like write a book in 2 days. I'm like, I won't even know what I wrote. I'm like, what's the
Yeah.
point of that? Where's the fun in that? So it's
Yeah.
interesting. But that's, I mean, listen, AI isn't going anywhere. It's here. It's 10xing in growth. I mean, we're at a stage already in AI that when it was first coming to the general public, because it's been in the background for years now, they're like, wow, we did not even expect it to go this fast. So it's interesting to see, but I think that's the beauty of it is how do we keep our connection and be aware of it?
Yeah.
I always say be the creator of content as opposed to the consumer of it, right? I
Yeah.
would much rather be the one in charge of it than being used by it. So
Yeah.
that's a whole other rant I can
Yeah, I love your point too about the writing because the AI that I do use to caption, because I guess I don't know why captions are a thing. Maybe people watch videos without sound. I don't know.
a lot.
But um, it will also come up with a fancy title and give you the score of how many, like, is this a viral title? And here's the caption to write. I'm like, but that's not me. Like, I don't have a huge following, but the people that follow me know that that's not how I write.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Your
Yeah.
unique voice, right? Like we
Yeah.
all, I'm sure, like even myself. And it's funny, like, and I think it's good to show too, because with AI, it's great. You could have great, fantastic, long. I mean, it learns a little bit your voice as you go, but most
Hmm.
of my guys know because I'll suddenly post and say like, guys, I got nothing today. Like I'm an empty vessel. I'm like, I'm just here to let you know that that's okay. Sometimes it's not going to come to you, right? And so,
Hmm.
whereas AI is just like, blah, 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 blah. And again, I'm not
Yeah.
pooping on AI. I think it's an
Right.
amazing tool. Again, it's how we use it. If we're using it for good, for whatever, if we're
Hmm.
using it for just quick fixes and like, hey, how do I make money fast schemes? To me, then it's like you're missing the journey. And I'm very much about it's about the journey. Like our whole lives is about the journey. It's not about the damn destination. It really, really is about the journey. Good ones, stepping stones, how we're doing it. Because most of the time we're so connected to an outcome and we think it's that outcome. And then we get there and it isn't what we expected, right? And if it doesn't turn out exactly as, then we think we've wasted all this time. And that's when we start to lose the message and the lessons that I have a t-shirt. I don't know. I bought it at some dinky store, but it says, grow through what you go through. And I love that shirt because I'm like, that's exactly it. It's like, these are the lessons that stretch us, that teach us, that challenge us, that help us see things differently, that push us out of our comfort zone. I hate comfort zone. I used to be so in love with comfort zone. And now I'm like, what do they say? Everything you want is on the other side of your fear. And it's true. Like if you actually use your fear as a compass, again, I'm not talking about jumping off a cliff. Like I'm afraid of that. But in the essence of things that you think, oh my, I could never do that. Right. Like, speak on a stage or even maybe there's a guy or a girl across the street you think is cute and you want to speak to them and you're petrified. Like even just learning to trust yourself by doing that small little thing. Like it's so beautiful. You see people do the smallest little thing that pushes them and they feel like amazing after that.
Yeah.
That's what helps us grow is that I did it, right? Like I call it to dare bravely. It's like, it's not to not be afraid. It's like that exhilaration you get after you've done and grown and pushed. And then it just keeps going. We never get there. We never get there.
Yeah.
We have different layers. And I mean, from where I was when I started, I get in it. And then it's like, oh, okay, I got rid of that one level of fear or doubt or lack or whatever. Now I'm like, yay. And then I get like, oh, I hit another ceiling. Okay, how do we work through that? And and when we can really connect to this idea of like, it really is about the journey. It's about the learning and the lessons and the connections we make along the way and the stories we're getting to share and tell. And just as I said, impacting people even on the smallest scale, just talking to someone at the grocery store, making their day a little brighter, seeing them. I hear so many people like, I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I'm invisible. The smallest smile you can share with someone, and they'll typically smile back, law of reciprocity. I mean, it's just such a beautiful small thing. And yet it can really make a big impact on your day for them and for yourself.
Yeah.
So simple. It really is simple. Only simple was easy.
Yeah. On that subject, I recently bought a sweatshirt. On the front, it says, "You are enough." And then on the back, it says, "Dear person behind me, the world is a better place with you in it. Love the person in front of you." And I was like, I have to buy that.
I love that.
So even if I don't talk to somebody while I'm in the grocery store, I don't know why that's like the example for today. But if I don't talk to somebody while I'm out, they can read my sweatshirt and know that I care. So
absolutely.
I don't remember where I bought it though, but listeners, if I find it, I'll put a link in the show notes. Yeah.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah. No, it's so I do. And again, it's how do we do that without the expectation? Because like I will smile at everyone and look them in the eye that I cross. I live in a small town now. As I said, I left everything corporate, sold my house, sold the stuff. I bought a small little property up in a country area by the rivers and forests. So we're a small town, but I go out of my way. And if they don't look me back or don't say hello, I'm not upset by it, right? Like it's not about what is it I'm getting back from it. It's like, who am I and how am I being and how am I living in integrity with that? Just because.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
If you do know, send me the link because I buy that sweatshirt. I love that.
Okay. Another thing I like to do is compliment people because it usually 9 times out of 10 throws them off. Like if I see a girl with bright teal hair, I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." I'll be like, "I love your hair." "Thank you." Like this, like you're saying, the smallest thing, like I see you. I see you and you matter to me, even though you're a stranger.
I do that too. I'll stop somebody in the street, even if it's just their smile, or where I love too, which I'm always surprised is as I worked in service at my first job serving at 13. I was like working in a cafeteria thing, and And I've always made it a point wherever I go, if I have like, if there's like actual service, is to try and have a conversation with that person, to share, and if it is great service, to let them know, hey, thank you for making this experience even better, right? Like it's all about that humanity. And how do we, so many people want to connect, and yet we're petrified to talk to each other, right? We're petrified to have those beautiful, intimate moments, right? Well, a lot of us, because we're afraid we're going to get rejected or somebody won't like what we do. And that's where it's about letting go of the attachment of needing someone else's approval. It comes from us, right? Outwards. How are we being who we're meant to? Like, my thing is believe, be, live the life you're meant to love. Like, how do you be that person? Not who you think people want you to be, but actually be yourself. And I can see, like you and me, it's like part of our essence is to radiate. Like, how do we kind of rub off and just be and see? And it's a beautiful thing, because you're right. You just see their faces light up, and it might be the only nice thing that person hears all day.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to keep to, is like, I want to do whatever part I can to elevate the beautiful parts of our humanity, because we really are amazing creatures, right? Like, I always think of it, I have a saying, people think it's like people come from love or hate, but I don't say that. I always say people come from love or hurt, because nobody is born with hate or these judgments or preconceptions, right? You put a bunch of cute little schmucky babies together and they're just all giggling and playing and sharing. And, it's just, they don't see differences. They're just living, right? And so that is the truth of who we are as people. So how do we reconnect to that and do those connections? And it's such a, as I said, I find it's fun. Like, life is fun, right? When we can start to just like test things and play with things and, put our toe in the water and get comfortable, and then a little bit more of our foot, and just kind of, that's why I said, for me, it's like, how do we really savor and live in the journey of this life?
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff.
Definitely. What came to me when you were talking about how everybody wants to connect, but we're all afraid to, is, I think a huge part of that is social media, because you can say anything. And if you go in the comments section, there's always at least one person that will put whatever you said down. And so I think maybe people, and this just came to me when you were talking about it, maybe people are afraid to do this in real life because they think if anything comes out of their mouths, they're going to be put down, which makes a lot of sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense if we're hinging our worth and our value on what other people think of us.
Yeah.
And that's the hiccup. We've been taught so externally to, and social media is definitely how many likes, how many followers, right? Like, and it's, it was a great book I'm reading, and she was talking about, the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. And yet with social media, all we get is the cover.
Yeah.
Right. We only get to see what people, isn't it? I know. It's Jamie Kern Lena's book, Worthy. She just,
I love her. I'm going to write that down.
It's an amazing book. It's really interesting. At some points I thought it was a little like eerie, but the more, it's such her voice. And I just, by the end, it actually gave me some aha moments. Right. And I thought that particular thing, I was like, it's so true. Right. Because I remember being in the park once, and there was this young boy all by himself, and he propped this stick up that had like a fork in it and his phone, and he's like taking selfies. And I was like, that's that book cover, right? Like, we're going places and showing, where in reality, right now, that's so not the real story that's happening. That's not how people are feeling. That's not what's being felt by people. Yeah. And there's definitely this idea of the fear, but of if I say, because people can be incredibly cruel behind the screen. Yeah. Again, just, it's easy, right?
Keyboard courage.
But at the same time, we get to decide whether what they're saying we give credence to or not. I was very lucky. My mom, at a very young age, it made no sense to me back then. I just thought she was a weirdo. But she used to always say, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And now as I've grown older and done all these studies and certifications and training, I'm like, yo, it's true. It was always there because it's only real if I make agreement with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you can say whatever. And if I don't believe that to be true, then it's okay. And again, we don't need everyone to like us. We really don't. We don't like everybody.
Exactly.
So why do we expect everybody to like us? I mean, it's nice when people like us for sure, but it's doesn't mean we're not worthy. It doesn't mean we're not awesome. It doesn't mean we're not, but I've got my own weird quirks and not everybody's going to like me. Like I'm pretty straight shooter. I don't do a lot of fluff, especially like I'm talking with my friends too. Like I don't do a lot of fluff, oh, it'll be okay. We're like, let's look at it. Let's grow through this. What's happening here? Like, hey, and I want friends like that. I want friends who challenge me and don't just agree with me. I want to debate. I want you to give me alternate perspectives and see things through different lenses. And I laugh at my own jokes because they're amazing. But not everyone's and I've always said I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. That's okay, right? We're that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us fun. And there's such a principle, because if we are showing up as anybody other than ourselves, we're attracting the wrong people. And so even if they do care about us, they don't know us. I don't want people. I used to give it as example. You ever, when you were younger, there was a guy maybe in high school and you thought he was like the bomb. And so you change who you were, right? Because you wanted him to like you. But I'm like, then imagine you actually attracted this person's attention. You go on a few dates. He loves who you're showing up as, but it's not you. Is that really a relationship you're going to want to be in? Like all the time having to pretend to be somebody else and not knowing like actually you, and then living petrified, like, oh, you want to do something, but oh no, I can't do that. I don't want that. That is complicated. That is a lot of work. I to be myself. And then it becomes and that's already enough work, because we have to be at ease with ourselves, and that's work. So if we have to have all these other layers of like, well, how do I be me? And I want to please this person and my parents and my spouse and my, like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Simplicity. As a recovering people pleaser, I feel that in my soul.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was too. I spent, I'm recently separated, and I had spent years building his dream and doing this and doing that. And like, never wanted to have anyone disappointed. And that is okay. That's beautiful. Except if you don't fill your own cup first, if you don't actually love on yourself, if you don't, and it's so cheesy, everyone says it, but like but I think it's such a poignant example and metaphor, is like when the plane's going down, you put your mask on yourself before you help someone else. And I think everyone uses it because it's so true. Yeah. And people pleasing, we're just willing to, I'm never sure there's a deflection. I always understood there was two things. One, I didn't think I was worthy enough, so I figured I would pour all my heart into other people. That was one way of people pleasing. It's like, oh, well, why bother for me, but I want to make your life as wonderful as possible. And the second one was to receive, to feel like you were worthy of anything, is the only time I felt it was when other people said, oh, Sarah, you're kind, or you're this, and then I would feel okay about myself. But when that wasn't happening, I felt kind of empty and numb. But that's all when we've externalized it. Whereas now, when it's, and there's, I always say that, but there's obviously days, right? Growth is not a straight trajectory upward. There's up and down. But that's why I call them temporary moments. But overall, it's like, do I love me? Like, do I love who I'm showing up as? Do I love who I'm being? And when I can do that, then you're able to, I don't like the word boundary, but let's say agreements, are you living a life that you're not afraid to say no? You're not doing those automatic yeses. You're not putting yourself last and then just being depleted all the time, right? Like we forget that we're worth our own time and attention as much as, and when we do that, I'm amazed too, because the more we love on ourselves, the more we fill ourselves up, the more we allow those creative juices, the more we actually really have to give other people from such a place of generosity rather than obligation or, for some other type of thing. It's just because it's there, but you're not, It's not a hinge. It's not the
Right.
swinging thing like, well, if I give you, then I'm okay. Or if I give you, then, hoping reciprocity down the road, because that doesn't always work. I learned the hard way. So yeah, it's people pleasing. I think a lot of us, especially, I hate to say especially as women, because I'm not a dude, so I don't know. So I don't want to pretend to jump in, but I do know from the woman's perspective, a lot of it is in our upbringing too, right? It's like, how our looks and stuff. I mean, if you look back when we're children with little boys, a lot of parents and friends will be like, oh, look what Johnny did, right? It's all about what did they do, create. And whereas girls like, oh, isn't she cute? Isn't she sweet? Isn't she? It's all
Yeah.
about who we are, like physicality and our gentleness. And so those long term, we start to internalize that. And we
Yeah.
get to a place where like, who are we? And we think we need to do it through other people. So that's why it's so fun.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite part of growth is I've gotten to a place where it's fun. Even the ugly stuff I get curious about. I'm like, I was talking to
Yeah.
a girlfriend this morning on the phone, and my ex said something to me and it triggered something and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it was interesting. I was talking to her and I was like, walk me through this. I'm like, I know there's something, but I'm not quite understanding what it is that it's, but I was like, let's play with it. Let's bounce around some ideas. And when you can move into that rather than berate ourselves or get angry or judgmental, or, when we can have that kind of awareness and curiosity and playfulness, right? How many of us would
Yeah.
love to be playful again? We talked again about going back with kids and animals where we get to let that go. We get to do that if we choose to in our
Yeah.
everyday lives, right? And so I always like to think of it, what a better way to do it than in our thoughts? How do we get playful and
Yeah.
curious with our thoughts, the good or the bad? Because we're going to have them. We have doubts. There are days where, you don't even realize it. I did a thing called the 7-day mental diet. And it was
Hmm.
just to notice when you had a negative thought pop in. And I've been doing this a long time now, self-development, coaching, training. And I was amazed when I did it. I was like, within the span of, I think, 2-3 hours, I was like, holy bugger. I think of that scene from Pretty Woman, the slippery little suckers. I was suddenly had that idea with my thoughts. Because I'm like, I didn't even, because I know how to change myself out of the state if I've gotten to a certain point, but I hadn't really done it where I'm just like being curious with any thoughts that come in. And I was like, wow, there really are a lot of negative thoughts that just, because we have what, 60,000 thoughts a day, 95% of them are repetitive. And I mean, just in that 60,000, how many of them are negative? If we just even start playing
Yeah.
with that, just open your awareness, get curious. I wonder. And only once we know, can we actually make any kind of change, right? We
Yep.
try so fast to make a change, but it's like, that's why I like curiosity and awareness is the first one. Just start getting curious. Start just paying attention. Where are your thoughts going? What kind of thoughts are they? Are they from inside or are they looking outwards? Because
Yeah.
until we get the recipe, like the ingredients of it, how do we bake any cake at all?
Mm-hmm. And we can, in my little coaching community, we call it noticing without judging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you notice the thought or the behavior or the whatever. And now that you're aware of it, you have the choice to choose it you have the choice to choose it. You have the choice to change it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're aware.
Absolutely.
So it
Absolutely.
just being curious brings up your choice. It gives you the choice.
I heard a great saying the other day. It said, you're perfect as you are and you can do better, which means, accept yourself as you are. And then when you know better, do better. But
Mhm.
don't berate yourself for where you are now, because it's absolutely fine. And you're right. Too many of us sit there and we spend so much energy on like, I should be doing this and I should, and if, and the
Yeah.
judgment. And I mean, to be fair, what's really interesting, I have one of the ways we look at things sometimes within my communities and my journey is like, as within, so without, right? So if you notice something that have that curiosity where you notice it pinches you or it pokes you or there's something in it that, like, judgment is a huge one that people have trouble working through sometimes too, because we were like, but when we're judging others, it's probably because either we're judging ourselves too much
Hmm.
or we're afraid of whatever everyone thinks of us. So when we can look at it as, as within, so without, or like Wayne Dyer, change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you can notice that and then say, I wonder what I'm reflecting. What's in that reflection in me? Like what is it? So if I'm getting judgmental or if I'm getting angry or at someone else, what is it within myself? Because again, if we can really, it's a hard one to own because it takes so much, but it really is within us. And the moment we can own that more than anything, people will do things. I'm not saying they won't. And they'll do things that hurt us or they'll do things that make us angry. But it's what we do with it.
Mm-hmm.
That next step, that is really the important one. And we can sit there and you know, I know people don't love the word, but that victim mentality, because it's safe. There's also a great sense of connection. When we're in that kind of like, oh, I had all this bad stuff happen. Oh, and people give you love, right? They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And so that's actually a need. We have this need for love and connection, and we can choose to fill it in beautiful, healthy ways.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes we get confused and we're meeting it through ways that are actually detrimental to ourselves, in staying in that stuck zone, and staying in that small zone, and staying in that, it's out of my control. And when we can start to say, okay, I can't control everything that's happening, but I can, from where I'm standing, take that step, start that journey, try something new, and own that. And for me, I think that was the most powerful thing, to be like, to let go and say, okay, it's not because my mom did that or my sister did that. It's like they did that, but what can I do now? Where do I get to go? Where do I get? And that's what you said. You said it, the word choose. We get to choose every step along the way. And that's a pretty powerful, again, that's why I said it's so funny, because the principles are so simple.
Yeah.
It's putting them into practice. It's putting them into play, and it's trusting ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing that I find. Most people don't trust themselves anymore.
Yeah.
And we won't learn to trust ourselves unless we actually take some of those steps that we're hearing from within us. Well, what's right for us, not what other people think is right for us. What do we feel? And then we talked again, pulls back that idea of still, even give ourselves time to listen. We give ourselves the space and time to just be with ourselves, and to let those energies and ideas and desires kind of float up and actually become present in our own lives. So,
yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day long, but I want to respect your time. I do have a question for you. I don't think I've asked you any questions. This was just an amazing conversation. But I do have a question that I ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
Really, it is to trust yourself. Learn to trust yourself. Do what's necessary to step into learning how to trust yourself. Because if everyone really followed what they knew inside to be best for them, we would be living in a very different world, and people would be a lot more joyous, because I believe everything you really need is within you. And it's when you can live by who you are, because it touches on everything. Trust yourself to be who you are, to dress the way you want to follow the career you want to speak up when you have something to say with love and compassion, not defense and defiance, right? Like, just follow a path where you really, 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 there's a thing where no matter what someone says, if I believe it's right for me, I can say, I trust me more. And I think if anyone can really embody that and love, because you also have to love yourself to trust yourself. You have to know you're worthy to trust yourself. Like, there's so much in it. So that would be my message. Do whatever it takes to really turn up the volume on your own voice and trust yourself.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, Sara Chevalier signing off. Until next time. Bye.